And good morning to the rest of the world. So I want to thank everyone again for coming on board this New World Series Lecture 6, which is entitled God is a Single Omnipotent Consciousness and Cosmic Supercomputer. And this is perhaps going to be the most challenging and probably the most technical. So I apologize if I dive into a lot of technicality, but this is, as I said, I use the word challenging because obviously I'm going to define God in a very, very scientific manner, and because ultimately this is the scientific proof and the mathematical logic that I define God as. So as I stated, for those that follow my personal mission journey, is my goal to scientifically prove the existence of God and create this fact-based religion. So this is the God book, which contains a lot of the technical details in this book, which was published in 2018 following my trip to Istanbul on the call to world peace. And it's been translated into Spanish Dios by the master scribe, Andrea Wen, and there's also a German version by Christian Schirlach, the German God version, and there's other translation which Andrew is also managing, including Dutch, Italian, Arabic, Hebrew, etc. So, but anyway, I'm going to share my screen and to help me explain where this God so definition come from. So if you just bear with me. So let me just find up the first screen share. So this is a chart of how I define various species, and I define it in terms of dimensions and in terms of levels. You can think of the levels of intellectual or conscious levels. Now, there's a lot of philosophical discussion as to what consciousness is. Some link it to the spiritual, to soul of the being, and that at this time we cannot technically prove or even adequately explain in a factual scientific way. So for my simplistic discussion on consciousness, I'm going to use the more mechanical definition that consciousness is a biological process similar, akin to a computer. So everyone who uses a computer, smartphone, will know or should know that the fundamental logic part of a computer is based off of binary code, simple 0 and 1. Every computer, every smartphone, every intelligent device is simply based off a transistor circuit, which goes from 0 or 1. It's that simple. The complexity that you see is created from the most simplistic of mathematical logic. Okay, so I am going to use that analogy to also define biological consciousness. So to me, there is no difference in terms of a computer logic, 0 and 1, and a biological decision-making, yes or no. So at the lowest level, so as you see at level 1, or dimension 1, level 9, is just particle, which have no consciousness. A particle is just like a sand on a beach. It just flows with the tidal wave in and out. Then the next level above that, which is the most simplistic of living organisms, bacteria and viruses, I define as level 8. So it goes in receding order in terms of the intellectual level. So a bacteria or virus, to me, does have a consciousness if you define consciousness as just a purely mechanical decision making. So a bacteria, as those study, they're very, very simple life form. They pretty much, like certain bacteria, respond to light. So when there's a light that shines on a culture of bacteria, a bacteria makes a decision. It uses the sensors to say, okay, well, there's a photon light beaming from this side, therefore I turn, and then it uses that simple consciousness, light, yes, dark, no, and it moves towards the light. And similarly, viruses are attracted to some biological cells because that's the only way it can replicate. So to me, bacteria and viruses do have consciousness, but a consciousness is equivalent to a computer 0 and 1. It literally says yes or no. So that's the purest level of comparison between a computer chip, a simple transistor circuit, which has a 0 and 1, and a bacterium virus that basically has a simplistic consciousness of saying yes or no, or reaction to a stimulus, either for it or against it. So in this case, a bacteria that's sensitive to light will move towards light and will move away from dark. So from a computer, all those that plays games on it, virtual reality, all that are based the intellectual construction of the most simplest circuit, 0 and 1. So I'm saying the same thing. It's the most complex of consciousness can be built on the most simplistic of biological reaction of a yes or no reaction. So you can move up that conscious level, that intellectual level, that basically, just like a computer, when the earliest computer were designed, it was very, very simplistic, like a cogwheel for your mechanism. A computer back in literally 50 years ago would fill this entire apartment, and all it could do was basically could not do the same calculation as the most simplistic of computers, of calculator these days. So similarly, as the complexity of a mechanical computer has advanced into, now we have artificial intelligence that can basically be almost termed as a mechanical life form, that it can decide based on its own programming, on its own cognitive algorithm, to basically advance its intellectual level to a conscious state that it can make its own decision. Well, similarly, from that early bacterial state, you move up the organisms to where insects and reptiles can decide on its own beyond just simply a reaction. And obviously there's more advanced forms like birds and mammals. Some will claim they have emotion. Some would claim that these kind of high conscious level being can even experience what we would term as love experience. Again, this is a very, very complex field, but I just wanted to draw the two parallel in that from the very, very foundation of the most simplistic of base, as I said, 0, 1, a computer, and in terms of biological consciousness, a yes and a no, you can build the most complexity of supercomputer, and similarly, you can build the most complexity of conscious mind. Okay. So in this example, or in this chart, I have humans at level 3 on the conscious or intellectual chart, and above that will be what I term as aliens. When I say aliens, I don't necessarily mean the green men thing. Aliens are those that can basically advance beyond its terrestrial base to navigate the outer space, which humanity will one day. And then angels, again, I'm not there saying winged with halo. When I say angels, I'm more defining it as these creatures that can transcend multi-dimension, because my twin universe, which I claim is the real science behind the composition of our cosmos, is multi-dimensional, it's 10 dimension. And angels are these entities that can basically transcend between these multi-dimensional phases. So again, I believe that if humanity it survives and evolved, then one day it will be able to transcend these multi-dimensional phases. And obviously the most advanced state is God itself. So by defining consciousness, in this case, just to keep it simplistic, as a mechanical, biological thinking process, then I am also then defining consciousness as an energetic process. So just like a computer, you need to plug a computer in to generate power, because the transistors that work needs power. That's why your computer gets hot when it thinks. The more the processors think, the hotter the computer gets, simply because it's generating a lot of energy. But similarly, again, that analogy is that the conscious state in our minds, it's also an energetic process. It needs energy. In this case, obviously, your biological body takes in energy by food. So I'm stating that consciousness is also an energetic process. Now, with the energetic process, it must then obey the laws of thermodynamics. And again, those that have followed my twin universe will know that I have modified the universal law of thermodynamics such that the first law, energy is conserved, but also in the second law, entropy is also conserved. Okay, so by defining consciousness as a purely energetic process, by that definition, it must therefore obey the thermodynamic laws, conservation laws. So again, defining the twin universe, again, I'm not going to go into detail. I've covered that in other lectures before, and I'll cover that in future lectures as well in another round. Therefore, I define live in this positive universe. So in this positive universe, all our consciousness are in individual bodies. So you see from this diagram, the C and the circle marks the consciousness in each human body. So on this planet, we have 7.8 human consciousness, but I also, as you saw from that defining chart, every living organism, even bacteria, has the most simplistic of conscious state as yes and a no. And then as you go to more and more advanced species, the complexity of the consciousness becomes more and more advanced. So therefore this consciousness beyond just human beings. But if you just focus on human beings, then there's 7.8 billion human consciousness contained in individual bodies. But if you assume that consciousness is an energetic state, well, to me, it's not even an assumption. It is a fact. A brain needs energy to work. Obviously, if you define consciousness as a mechanical thing, which I do, because the consciousness comes from your mind are a network of neurons, and those neurons need energy to function. Therefore, to me, it's not an assumption. It is a fact. Consciousness needs energy to work. Therefore, the conservation of energy will say that in the twin universe, there must be an equal amount of consciousness or equal amount of energetic processing in the other universe. So in this case, the negative universe. Now, consequence, for those that previously followed my lecture, is that the conservation of entropy forces a duality state, a wave-particle duality. So if one state is a particle, the other twin must be a wave. And similarly, if one is a wave on this universe, the other must be a particle. Therefore, I am stating that in our positive universe, if all the conscious states are an individual particle state, individualized as particle, then in the other universe, to conserve entropy, the other energetic process of consciousness must be in a wave state. Now, again, this is scientific fact. If you put waves of the similar structure, so it's either sound wave or it's water wave, these waves will superimpose. Therefore, if all the conscious waves in the negative universe are waves, then all those consciousness will combine as one superimposed wave. And that's why on this chart, you see I have all the consciousness combined as one superimposed consciousness, which is where I got the term from, single omnipotent consciousness, which is my scientific definition of this entity I refer to as God. Now, The $64,000 question is, can God interact with us? And this is a chart which I state yes. Again, in this positive consciousness, our interaction are physical. Therefore, I call it a physical intra-action. Intra means within. Therefore, we cannot consciously, at this time in our evolution, interact through mind. Well, some people claim they can, but most obviously cannot. So in this universe, we can only interact physically, which again I've illustrated by these arrows between the bodies. So we cannot consciously link our minds together, but we can physically interact. So I can speak to you. So I'm speaking to you now. So I'm providing information in a physical manner by speaking and delivering the information that's coming from my consciousness through my voice and transmitting that information to you, and then you're digesting that into your consciousness. And that's how we're physically exchanging information, exchanging our consciousness. We're having to do it in a physical manner. On the other hand, if we advance to this wave-like consciousness, then I believe that in a high evolutionary state, that consciousness can be interacted with through this spiritual intra-action. So you have intra within and inter between separate states, just like a interstate highway that links two states. Or similarly, through this spiritual interaction, I believe we can tap into this greater cosmic wave. And now, whether you believe that or not, you only have to listen to the greatest inventor of all time, Tesla, that claims that he got all his greatest thought, all his invention from the cosmos. And even Einstein and even the DNA founder said that he got his answer on the helical design of the DNA through a dream. Therefore, I want to believe that in a dream state, because in an awake state, or we are interacting with our world in a physical state. So our mind is saturated with a lot of senses from our five senses. Therefore, our mental state is clouded by all this sensory stimulation. Therefore, in a dream state, and there are obviously a lot of tribal Aboriginal tribes that basically say that they can have this out-of-body experience by taking drugs, for example. Therefore, there are I believe, a way for us to experience consciousness beyond the physical, either through dreams or by taking drugs. I'm not here proposing that you should be taking drugs, not at all, of course. But I believe as we advance to a higher state of being, that one day we will be able to telepathically converse with consciousness in a wave state, as opposed to a particle state that I'm doing now in a physical manner. Okay. Now, going back to a more mechanical definition of consciousness is, well, then just how powerful is the single omnipotent consciousness? Therefore, I've listed three different types of intellectual mechanism. So on the left, again, the analogy is obviously the computer. So the transistor is the equivalent on the right, which is a human brain, is the neuron. So the transistor is made of silicon. The neuron is made of carbon. So we have silicon consciousness and an organic-based consciousness. Now, highest level supercomputer or computers have up to 10 up to 1 billion transistors in a CPU, a central processing unit. And a human being, the central processing unit, is of course the brain. And we have on average 10 to the power 11, that's 100 billion neurons in our brain. Now, a standard computer, like I'm using on my desktop right now, can do 10 to the power 11 operations per second, whereas a human brain can do 10 to the power 16 operations, that's number thought interactions per second. Okay, now actually an advanced supercomputer now can actually match this. In fact, the most powerful supercomputer can actually do 10 to the power 17 operations per second. So it's order of magnitude more powerful than a human brain. Okay, so we think, wow, a supercomputer and a human brain is the highest level of intellectual level. Well, we believe that the cosmos itself is this combined single omnipotent consciousness, then just how powerful is that? Therefore, if we calculate the number of quantum states, and before in one of the previous lecture, I used the genetic genome of God itself to calculate the number of quantum states that exist in our cosmos. Now, this matches the number of observable baryonic particles in our universe. So that's where this value comes from, 10 to the power 82 quantum states. So I'm saying this is equivalent to the number of transistors in a computer and equivalent to the number of neurons in a human mind, because I'm stating that the entire cosmos itself is a neural network of consciousness. Therefore, again, you see just how vast this conscious supercomputer is compared to this minuscule, tiny brain of humanity, and in this smaller artificial intelligence as a computer. Now, if you want to calculate number of operations per second, now I put infinity, but in terms of seconds, as you know, those that know a bit of math know that the smallest bit of time is the Planck time. I believe that's 10 to the power minus 42 second. Therefore, if you divide this quantum state by 10 to the minus 42, you can actually determine is roughly around 10 to the power 120 calculations per second if you want to be able to define the number of operations. So you can I just simply put it infinity. So in other words, I'm just defining just how powerful this cosmic supercomputer is. It is just astronomically advanced, which is obviously a definition of God. So anyway, that is how I genuinely believe, and I generally have come to a conclusion logically and through scientific proof. Again, I previously defined how my prediction of the new mathematics, my prediction of the new science that I formulated has proven, and I use the word proven because in science, the way you prove something is you have a theory, the theory makes prediction, and then you compare that prediction with experiment. And if your prediction matches experiment, then it's proven right. If it doesn't match with experiment, then it's proven wrong. So all the predictions that I have made, and again, you have to go and see the previous lecture, I have arrogantly stated, and it's not just arrogant, because I said to you, I calculate numbers, I show everyone these numbers have matched observable values that other scientists have measured. So that's why I am very, very confident that what I've defined regarding the twin universe, regarding the conscious state being an energetic process, regarding that the laws of entropy, laws of thermodynamics for energy and entropy automatically, logically leads to the definition that there is this greater consciousness that exists as a superimposed state in the other universe. And this superimposed state, as you can see from these values, is just so much more vastly, I won't use the word complex, because in a way it's not complex, but what it can do is obviously unimaginably, unfathomably beyond what we are capable of. It's like comparing us to a bacteria, okay? So you compare the cosmic intelligence to us, it's like comparing us to a bacteria. So that's how advanced this single omnipotent consciousness is. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now and come back to you. So this is just a short statement, and it covers where my approach to defining God in a scientific manner, and obviously stating arrogantly that this God can be found logically through the mathematical statement, and scientifically through the experimental observation that matches the prediction that I have made. So I thank you again for watching and for listening and absorbing the knowledge and the truth. And in the preceding lectures that will be coming, I will go into in more detail, in more elaboration about this great finding, which I believe is important for this new world that is coming for us. So I don't think this is just coincidence. I believe everything that's happened is fated for a great reason to come. So God bless you all, and I look forward to continue this journey of knowledge and truth, and as we go into this new world. So thank you again, and I'll see you hopefully next week and into this new year that's coming shortly in the next couple of weeks. All right, take care. God bless.